Hi, this is Patricia Stepler with your Inside Power, where we help you to overcome anything that's happening in the outside world and start to live from the inside out. Today, my show is a continuation of one I started a few weeks ago. And in that show, that was part one of Be a Money Magnet Expert. This is part two. And in the show description, I have this quote by Albert Einstein: everything is energy, and that's all there is to it. Match the frequency of the reality you want, and you cannot help but get that reality. It can be no other way. This is not philosophy, this is physics. Now, the good thing about that is that puts earning money into the realm of a science. And in fact, in the book that I referenced in the first episode of this Be a Money Magnet Expert by Wallace D. Wattles is called The Science of Getting Rich. Now, in that book, it doesn't just talk about earning money, it's talking about wealth in all areas. And the one thing, and this is why you may want to go back and reread, or not reread, but rewatch the first episode, is because we talk about the frequency. One of the important things, if you want to change any aspect in your life, is you have to think about what it is that you want, but then you have to also get to the point where you're living on that frequency. And keep in mind that, just like you said here, everything is vibrate or energy. So everything's vibrating. Things may look like they are solid, like the wall may look very solid and still, but if you had the right equipment, you could see that it's moving at a very high vibration. And you can't see that with your own eyes, but if you had the right equipment, you would see that everything is always moving, everything's energy. That's all there is to it, as Einstein says. So the first thing you need to know in order to become a money magnet expert is, what do you want? You know, so often we have a vague idea of what we want. And sometimes people say, well, I want to have more money. Be careful about that, because if you had an extra $1 or $2 or $5, that's more money. And that's probably not what you're after. So you really have to have a concrete idea of a certain amount of money. In Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich, he talks about you need to be specific. Do you want $10,000? Do you want $100,000? Do you want $1 million? Be very specific. And then what are you going to do? What are you willing to give up? What are you willing to do, to change, to work on in order to accomplish that money? And then also, what service or product are you going to provide for people? Because you have to be as specific as you possibly can. And that just becomes really important. So the other thing is, your ability to earn money is related directly and indirectly to working with the natural laws of the universe. There are laws that work in this world. And let's just talk about gravity. I may have mentioned this in the first part too, but we have gravity. And we can see gravity. You drop a stone from a roof and it's going to go down. It's not going to float. And so that's a visible thing we can see, but not all laws can we see how they work. Just like electricity, we can't see how electricity works. You can understand how it works. You can learn the science, but for most of us, we just know it works because we, flick on a light switch and, there we have electricity. But there are laws that work for everything. And understanding how the laws of prosperity work and how wealth works, and even to some degree, understanding the financial processes that we have in place, although they're not working necessarily with the laws of the universe, but understanding all this information is important if you want to accumulate wealth or to become rich. Now, with these laws, you can act with them, and sometimes we act with them and we don't even realize that we are indeed working with those laws, and we just stumble upon something and we get success. Just like if you watched some of my earlier videos when my son got a scholarship, he didn't understand what he was doing. He just happened to stumble upon the laws. He happened to follow those laws, and lo and behold, he got a scholarship. Same thing with earning money. Sometimes we stumble into something and it works for us, but because we don't understand the laws, we can't duplicate it. We can't tell anybody exactly how we did it. We can't do it again because we don't really know. The point is, you can work with these laws and learn them and become aware of them and their impact on your life, or you can disregard them. But you cannot change them, and you cannot alter them. You can't change them to meet your needs, because laws will work for you just like they'll work for somebody else. Now, that's the good news, because when you realize that it's a matter of being aware, and awareness is everything, but it's a matter of being aware that there are laws, and that if you follow these laws, that you can get them to work with you, then the possibilities become endless. And you start to understand that if you just follow the process and you make the shifts in your mind that you need to make, then success for you will happen just like anybody else. Wallace D. Wattles in The Science of Getting Rich says, thought is the only power that can produce tangible riches from formless substance. The stuff from which all things are made is a substance which thinks. A thought of form in this substance produces the form. So from what he's saying there, and keep in mind, this was written back around 1903. And when Wallace wrote this, you have to believe that there is a formless substance that is equally present in all areas of the world at the same time. And it's a thinking substance. Some of us would just call it God. God is omnipresent, and you can talk to him at any time. You can put a thought out there at any time. But there's this thinking substance that exists. And when you put an idea into that thinking substance, immediately it starts to work for you. So he goes on to say there's thinking stuff from which all things are made, and which in its original state permeates, penetrates, and fills the inner spaces of the universe. A thought in this substance produces a thing that is imaged by the thought. You can form things in your thought, and by impressing your thought upon this formless substance can cause the thing you think about to be created. And we talked about in the last session about act as if you already have it. Now, it's different than faking it till you make it. Some of these people say, fake it till you make it. And that's a process that some people use. But what I want you to start to do is to act as though the goal that you have is already in your life. Because when you can do that, when you can act as if the goal that you have is already in your life, you can do about anything. So what we say here is that a man is what he thinks about all day long. That's by Ralph Waldo Emerson. So you take that thought and you think about it. How long do you think about it? All day long. You become that person. You start acting as if you already have accomplished the goal that you want, and that you already are the person that you need to be in order to accomplish that goal. And you think about it all day long. Why is it important to think about it all day long? Why do you have to keep repeating it? Well, first of all, repetition is how we learn. Repetition of ideas. You don't go to school and one day the teacher says, okay, I'm going to teach you how to add. Okay, I've taught you that, we're done. No, you repeat that over and over and over again until you get so embedded into your subconscious mind that you understand how to do it. That's what you have to do with the thought. This thought of what it is that you want, you must think about it all day long. You must think about it over and over again. Now, obviously, we're not going to think one thought all day long. One of the things I do is I have a Fitbit that I wear, and on my Fitbit, I have some alarms set, and in those alarms, every time it goes off, like during the day, when the alarm goes off, it's not an alarm to get up and do something. It's an alarm that reminds me to think of my goal. And it doesn't take long, just a few minutes. I think of my goal, and that's starting to impress that goal into my subconscious mind so that I will then be able to recall that and bring it into my existence, bring it into my reality, because that's what Albert Einstein says, right? Energy is, that's all there is to it. And he says that when you match the frequency, so when you think about that goal all day long, it's putting you on that frequency, because even if it's just for a few moments, multiple times during the day, you're matched onto that frequency of where your goal is, and you cannot help to get it into your reality. There is no other way. It is not philosophy, it's physics. Okay, so we think about that goal and we have that repetition of ideas, and that's how we're going to draw it into our lives. Earl Nightingale, who was a mentor to my mentor, Bob Proctor, said that most people think they want more money than they really do, and they settle for a lot less than they could get. Let's look at that and break that down a bit. We think we want more money than we do. I think that could be a possibility, because when you start to break it down, you can start to see how much money you actually need. You know, how much do you actually need to live on? And then figure out how much money each month you need to live the lifestyle that you would choose. You know, if you're living in a house you chose, if you're driving a car that you chose, if you're wearing the clothes that you chose, if your kids were going to the schools that you chose, how much money would you need monthly? And figure out and see if it is really more than what you think you need, or maybe it's less. I think the bigger part of his statement is the last part. They settle for a lot less than they could get. That's the important part of that statement. Because even though we may want, let's say, just to make it easy, $1 million a year, we may want to have that, we're willing to settle for $50,000, because we never take the time to figure out exactly what it takes to earn that $1 million, or how we could actually acquire that $1 million a year. And we're willing to settle for a much lower standard of living than what we really could get. So you need to figure out how much is enough. So Napoleon Hill says in Think and Grow Rich, the riches, when they come in huge quantities, so I'm not talking about, $1 more or $100 more. We're talking about huge quantities. When riches come in huge quantities, they're never the result of hard work. Riches come, if they come at all, in response to definite demands based upon the application of definite principles and not chance or luck. So when they come, it's not hard work. Sometimes we have to think that earning a lot of money is hard work. How many people do you know that work hard and end up relatively poor or average, and they're working hard? It's not about hard work. It's about the thinking, and that's what people miss. They sometimes people will think that shifting your mindset and shifting your thought patterns is not that important. That what you have to do is to do a to-do list. You have to do this task and this task and this task. That's not what's being said here. What Napoleon Hill is saying is it's never the result of hard work. You see, getting rich is the result of thinking and acting in a certain way. Thinking and acting a certain way. And when you realize how to think and act in a certain way, then you will get the riches. He goes on to say, riches come, if they come at all, in response to definite demands. You have to demand it. It can't be like, this is a nice thought. I'd like to have this, or if it was possible, I'd like to earn $1 million. You have to demand that that's what's going to happen, and there is no return. I was on a call yesterday, and the person leading the call was talking about sales and asked one of the participants, if they had children. And she said yes. And she said they're grown children. And he said, well, I want you to think of this. If you don't earn $10,000 this month, your kids are going to die. What would you do? Obviously, if your kids are on the line, you're going to bust your butt to get that $10,000. His point is, it's definite demands. That's what Napoleon Hill is saying, definite demands. You have to demand it upon yourself that you are going to earn that money and not allow it to be chance or luck. That's the worst thing you can do, is allow it to be chance or luck. So why is it so important to change your mindset? If you've ever ridden a plane and you've gone through turbulence, turbulence will affect that air moving, will affect the projected pattern of that airplane. And just being, like a degree or two off is going to mean you're not going to land at the airport you're supposed to. So what happens is, in an airplane, you have a cybernetic mechanism that when that plane goes off by the turbulence, the cybernetic mechanism will bring that plane back on track so that you land at the airport you need to land at. Your thermostat in your house does the same thing. You're sitting in a house, maybe you have a lot of people there, and it's getting quite warm, and maybe you have the temperature set for 73, and all of a sudden it's up to 74 or 75 because there's so many bodies there and all that body heat. So your air conditioning kicks on and it brings the temperature down to 73, which is where you had it set, or the opposite for heat, whichever. The point is, the thermostat has a cybernetic mechanism. So all of a sudden the temperature's gone up, it's deviated from where it's set. And so then your heat pump, your air conditioner, your furnace, whatever the temperature, whatever season it is, will adjust to bring you back. Well, inside your mind, you also have a cybernetic mechanism. And that cybernetic mechanism inside of your mind, generally part of your self-image that you have, but it gives you self-worth. And whatever income you're earning, and I know I said this in part one, that everything you have in your life right now, you have brought into your life by your thoughts and your actions. If you want to change, you're going to have to change your thoughts and your actions, and you're going to go to a higher frequency. So just like an airplane or a thermostat has a cybernetic mechanism, your mind does also. And where you're at, and let's just say you're 100,000, just to make it an easy reference, easy numbers. So you're earning 100,000 right now, and you have a certain self-worth of your ability to earn $100,000. You may want to earn $1 million, but that's not where your thinking is. Your thinking is 100,000. You see, the difference between 100,000 and $1 million is quite a distance. $1 million's up here in this higher frequency. Here's 100,000. It's on this lower frequency. So in order for you to move to that $1 million frequency and get your mind there, you have to change your thoughts. You're going to have to think differently. You're going to have to imagine. You're going to put that idea out there in the formless substance. As Wallace D said, imagine what's like living with that increase in earnings, and see yourself driving that car, living in that house, doing the things that you would do if you had that money, going on trips that you would plan, and so on, and actually live as if you are worth $1 million a year. Because until you make that shift mentally, you're going to fall back to where you are. And we see this happening with salespeople. Let's say a salesperson typically earns $100,000 a year, but 1 month they just went all out and they earned $25,000. Maybe let's just take the month of March. So they've been earning maybe $10,000 a month, and all of a sudden March they earn $25,000. Well, now their projection is going to be well over $100,000. And so they think, this is the year I'm going to do this. But you see, if that 25,000 was kind of a fluke, that was luck, maybe an account came through they weren't counting on, and they didn't realize that they had changed the thinking, and now their thinking goes back to earning 10,000 a month, so that they get 100,000, and they still see themselves as a $100,000 salesperson. By the end of the year, they'll have months where they did very poorly. In the end of the year, they earn about the same. Ask a tax consultant, somebody who's doing taxes for people, how many people's income changes drastically year to year? Aren't that many. It's an occasional person. Most people earn about the same amount. Their tax burden's about the same. Of course, unless they get some deductions taken away. But things don't change for most people year after year. So we have to do something. We have to shift our thinking and be willing to step out of our comfort zone and maybe step away from some of the people we're hanging around, because maybe you've heard this, but you become like the 5 people you hang around the most. Well, if those 5 people you hang around the most are your coworkers, and you start to have what we call group think, and you start thinking the same way. Well, if you're thinking like other people who earn $100,000, that's pretty much where you're going to stay. That's one thing that keeps people from moving beyond where they are, is because they know they're going to have to shift and find some new friends. And maybe those people who they're really close to will also try to drift away, because they're going to want to keep you there. They want to keep you down with them, because if you become very successful, that makes them look bad. So they want to keep you and pull you down to stay with them. What I want you to realize is that there's this thing called the law of compensation. And the law of compensation says this, that the amount of money that you earn is in direct relation to the need for what you do. Now, I assume if you're out there and you're in a job or you're in your own business, there must be a need for what you do. The second part of the law of compensation is your ability to do it. This is the one thing that you can do to make yourself irreplaceable. Become so good at what you do that it's difficult for somebody to replace you, because you're going to be so much more valued. Because the third part is the difficulty in replacing you. So if you're difficult to replace, you're going to be worth a lot and you'll earn more. So it's the need for what you do, your ability to do it, which is the one thing that you can work on a lot, and the difficulty in replacing you. Keep in mind, Earl Nightingale also said this, that right here we come to a rather strange fact. We tend to minimize the things we can do, the goals we can reach, and yet for some equally strange reason, we think others can do things that we cannot. I want you to know that's not true. You do have deep reservoirs of talent and ability within you, and you can have the things you want. What Earl Nightingale is saying here is that, yes, we might want to earn $1 million, but we don't necessarily think we're capable of doing that. Oh yeah, maybe Bob can do that, or Susie can do that, or Jana, or somebody else can do that, but certainly not us. And we seem to think that they have gifts and talents and abilities that we do not have. And yet once we realize that when we're given an idea, we are also given all the ability and all the resources to obtain that idea. It can make a big difference in your life. You've got talents and abilities you'll never touch in your lifetime. And you certainly have a lot of talent and ability deep inside that you can tap into to obtain what it is that you want. And that's why success for so many people just seems to be a mystery. And that's just a really sad thing, that we don't have those resources. So when you begin to align yourself with the universal spiritual principles, the laws that we talked about in the beginning, that govern the universe, life begins to take on that shape of the beauty and the love and the intelligence that governs the cosmos. So when we begin to understand this, we also begin to understand how the law of attraction starts to work. Now, I would like you to go to my website, which is yourdreampower.com. And when you go to my website, scroll down to where it says events, because I have a number of different events that are coming up, or will be there when you see this, that you can tap into. Sometimes it might be a masterclass. Currently, depending on when you're watching this recording, currently I'm doing some on being a money magnet expert. And so we're talking about the law of attraction and how to attract that into your life. I'm also going to be doing different events. So there might be, 1-day event or 3-day event, but all the information will be under that event section on that website page. So make sure you go there and check that out. And also go to my Facebook page, which is also Your Dream Power, like that page. And you might even want to join one of my groups, which I have listed on that Facebook page. So I encourage you to do that so that you can tap into that and keep with the recordings here that we have on the Win-Win Women Network and on the different show routes that you can look and watch the Your Inside Power episodes. So this is Patricia Stepler with Your Inside Power, where we are always trying to get you to go inside so that you can relate to the outside world through your intellectual faculties instead of just using your 5 senses. And I'll see you next week.